it's time to sharpen up those edges and grease up your chains.
We are going to live it up with mountain life. Dropping in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, mountain lifers? How you doing? Are you good? You got your snow tires on? Have you put the fresh duct tape on your old ski pants yet? Pro tip, I like to use that shiny metallic tape they use on dryer ducts. That stuff is sticky as heck and looks awesome, futuristic. Plus, if you're ever lost in the backcountry, you can use your pants to reflect the sun and signal low-flying aircraft. Yeah, I don't think that's ever happened, but it's possible. Maybe. In any case, welcome to the Live It Up with Mountain Life podcast. I'm Feet Banks, and we're back at it after cranking out the regional issues of the magazine, so watch for those wherever you get your mags. And happy almost winter. That chill is in the morning air, and hopefully you're all watching the snow lines creep down whatever mountains are near where you live. Shred season is coming. But today we're talking to a rock climber and a crazy adventurer and a mad genius tinkerer who just designs and builds the stuff he needs. Matt Maddaloni is on the show, and we're mixing things up a bit as well, but I'll get into that after these words from our good friends and partners over at Citizen Watches. Time is important in the mountains. Out there in the wild, missing a rendezvous or misjudging how much daylight is left can have dire consequences. For over 100 years, Citizen have been known for creating quality timepieces and embracing ideas and actions that elevate society above self and respect the planet we love to explore. Need an altimeter or a pro-quality dive watch? Citizen's ProMaster series provide functionality, durability, and the spirit of adventure up in the air, on land, or at sea. With a huge line of professional-grade, sport-inspired designs, Citizen keeps you on time and makes every minute count. Find your next perfect timepiece at citizenwatch.com. Better starts now. Time is ticking, so let's get into it. We've been doing this pod a while now, and I always believe in trying new things. So when a buddy and longtime friend of Mountain Life suggested sliding in as a guest co-host for this pod, I figured why not? Which means this conversation with Matt Maddaloni will have a third voice, Trevor McDonald, a.k.a. T-Mac, a noted Squamish climber and adventurer and friend to all, so long as you don't have a schedule to keep. Since interviewing Matt was T-Mac's idea, I wanted him to handle the introductions. But one quick note, there is a bit of language and adult topics covered in this one. Nothing too hardcore, but if you've got kids or are worried about stuff like foul words, yeah, be alert. Okay, take it away, T-Mac.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here and to be part of what I think is going to be an interesting conversation with a local legend. So, what does it mean to be an adventurer? It almost feels like a word from the past. It's certainly more than recreating in an exotic locale. An adventurer seeks out something new that the world has to offer, often with a great deal of difficulty. Drive, fitness, creativity, and an analytical mind are needed to navigate unknown terrain. Matt Maddaloni is an adventurer. With a background in professional climbing, Matt has pioneered some of the most impressive climbs from the big walls of the Chief to first ascents in the Waddington Range. Alongside his love of climbing is the ability to make specialized rigging gear, leading to the formation of his company, Sea to Sky Cable Cam. His passion and business have taken him to some of the most hidden reaches of the planet. These days you'll find Matt surfing remote breaks, rappelling into some of the deepest caves on Earth, soloing sea cliffs, or making music with his family. You never know what Matt's going to get up to next.
All right, well, here we go. Matt Maddaloni.
It does absolutely fucking wonders. I mean, you can have a microphone on one person and just hear the other person from a distance, and the technology will make them both sound like they're on a mic.
No way.
Sick.
And it'll completely remove somebody if you need to, whatever. I'll introduce you to it, because it's literally, you could just drop it on your entire file. I'll just clean everything up instantly, and you won't have to worry about that anymore. But you still have to do a little bit of work. But if you get it kind of okay, they'll just take care of the rest.
I mean, I need to learn that, because the AI is making everything easier.
Oh, it's awesome. Remember you suggested I use it to run my Madagascar story through it, and it kind of pissed me off how good it was. You know what I mean? It was like it took my story and made it way better. And I was like,
dude, at least you're not a musician.
That's a good point.
AI
it's a good point.
Musicians.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
I think this is kind of an interesting spot to start, though, about sound, because that's something that you've been involved with for quite a few years now with rigging and all the production elements that you do. Sound is one of them, is it not?
Yeah, I never thought I would get into sound ever. Like, it's definitely not something I envisioned as a kid. I got into it because I needed more hats. Because one of my favorite things to do in the world is to be on documentaries, tell real stories, real people, real situations. And I got into documentary through my cable cam company. So that's pretty specialized. And I was only getting so much work. But man, there's so many good camera people around, so many super talented individuals. And I was not getting as much work as I wanted to. And I'm like, what's missing? And I think it was Dave Pearson, who kind of convinced me. He's like, hey, what about sound? No one's doing sound, man. You know? And with some rigging experience and the ability to put on a harness and a rope and do a job that no one else is doing in that format, adventure film, it kind of made sense. And honestly, since doing that job for 15 years, I think I've grown more as a person doing audio than anything else I've ever done in my life. The amount of interviews I've done with just anybody and everybody, like it could be like everybody's got a story. It doesn't matter who you are. You've had something happen to you that no one else has ever had happen to them. And you've learned stuff that no one else may understand. And so to just hear that rawness from people, and whenever film's made, you have such a small piece that actually comes out on film.
Yeah.
A small part of that story. But when I sit for an interview with somebody, it's like maybe hours and you get all of it, and I'm just like, for me, I'm not only am I wearing the headset and I'm changing the levels and making sure they sound good, but I'm just like absorbing their story because I love stories so much.
And if they didn't have a good story, they wouldn't be with a camera on them getting interviewed. So you get to hear all these top quality stories. Do you get pulled ever into the podcast world then? Because that's more of exactly what you're talking about there, right? The unedited full interviews.
Yeah, I've done a couple kind of like this. I've never done a talk myself.
Yeah.
But 99.9% of the time it's interviews for film.
Right.
It's going to get edited. It's going to be on, a bunch of visuals thrown at it, whatever.
And then sound in the field. Like you worked on The Alpinist.
I did.
So
yes.
There's that one dry tooling section in there where he's chipping away up some wall, and the sound of that section of the tools on the rock, and it's just it makes it so much more harrowing.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's one shot I was involved with Brett Harrington where she is free soloing the first pitch to the grand wall off the ground. What is it called? The flake or something?
It can be the flake or the 10B variation, whatever.
Yeah,
it is.
it's a thin crack. It's 5'10", but it's pretty exposed. It's pretty serious. Well, I put a mic on her just to see what we would get, and it was like against her skin near her heart.
Oh,
and
yeah.
as she got closer to the crux, her heartbeat starts to take over the audio a little bit, and she's like huffing and puffing and doing her thing, but it's like it gets more intense. And then I watched the film and I'm like, man, you can hear her heart. They use that. That's so sick. This is incredible.
That is sick, because we used to just drop it in post, right? But if it's the real heart, it's way cooler.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Sound, you can just watch any horror movie. Sound is huge.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what you've been. What have you been working on this summer? Because you do, like you said, so many different hats: rigging, camera, UAV, cable, sound,
Totally.
director, editor.
Well, I got excited to get into natural history filmmaking because I thought I'd be able to go out and get sound from animals, and that was a bit of a letdown because 90% of that sound is after the fact. So any of these films you see where it's like a lion is roaring and it runs after its prey and takes it down, it's all added after the fact because the cameraman moving around and creating all this havoc, you just cannot be quiet in those situations.
You'd get
to get
footsteps and stuff.
Yeah, so it's all added. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to be able to do this. And they're like, no, we don't even do that. And the crews I was working with, they were like, man, we haven't put a microphone on our cameras in years. Like, how does that work again? I'm like, are you guys kidding me? And they're like, no, it's all sound design. So that was a big bummer. But I did get one chance to do original audio for animals. And it was in Madagascar working for River Road. And the director says to me, you know what, these lemurs, no one's ever really professionally recorded them before for sound. And we're doing a story on them. And we don't have anything. in our libraries. Do you think you can get something? So I spent 2 days just with a bunch of trackers out in the jungle, no camera people around, and we would find lemurs, and I would like climb up trees, set up microphones, and then we'd all just lay down in the forest and nobody move and record it. And it was just like, all right, I'm living the dream. This is awesome. Yeah. But no, 99% of the time, it's only dialogue that I'm recording for sound most of the time. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Tell me some of the other exotic places you've been. I think you were in Borneo as well. And do you really like getting into the lush jungle and that sort of environment? Or what's your jam? What's your favorite kind of wild environment to be involved with?
Yeah, I think I've really fallen in love with jungles. I got really lucky to work with River Road again the last couple of years on a shoot called Shared Planet. And I did all the forest episode. So audio and a lot of cable cam work. So setting up, high tension ropes between two trees or up a cliff or whatever, and doing slow natural history shots, pushes and rises of animals in place, like orangutans when we were in Borneo. But Borneo actually is become really close to my heart because I got to go back last year and do something for sorry, I apologize. Let me try that again. I got to go back this year, this time for Apple, and I think it's the best piece of work I've ever done. So I got to tell you this story. So show up with Apple and their Apple Vision Pro. So, the whole goggles that you put on, and it's VR and everything, and the resolution is spectacular. And Apple is crazy about getting the absolute best thing they can get, so they don't put out a lot of stuff. So anything they are going to put out, it's hugely scrutinized by the company. It's at the absolute best that they can do as far as technical ability. So we go out there to shoot orangutans, a story on them. And I have like 7 different cable cams I got to do. And one of them, I'd already been to this area before, and it was with River Road. And I had seen this 150-foot vine going up a massive tree. I'm like, I think we can get an orangutan to climb this tree. And the way that we do it is we set up a rope that we fire up and over a branch, and we put a little basket on it, fill it with some fruit, send it up there, and then the orangutans that'll come out of the forest will climb up to go after it because they've seen this before. Lots of film companies have been out there. So we do that. We send up a bunch of mango or something up this tree, and they have this one teenage orangutan that they know that they, hand in hand is they have like a rehabilitation center there. So they're quite used to this whole thing going on. So they bring him out. He climbs up the vine. It works out great. We set up a vertical shot with my cable cam and their very big, very expensive Apple VR camera. So it's a 180-degree view, so you can look straight up to the sides, not behind you. You can't see all our rigging, and it just climbs up slowly with the vine. So the orangutan goes up, shot looks great, and we're like, you know what? That was rad, but let's come back in the morning when the light's gorgeous. We'll get it sparkling through the trees, get some light on the scene. It's going to be awesome. Okay, great. So I leave everything there, and we know we have a very early start. So I asked the riggers up in the tree, hey guys, take the motor system and the rigging, take a tarp, wrap it up tightly, get some ratchet straps on it, make it tight. And I've had orangutans hang out on my cable cam before. Sometimes we have to chase them away by driving after them, whatever, but it's fine. And we've left stuff up doing this exact thing, wrapping up with the tarp. It's all been good. Well, we come back this morning and the tarp's shredded. There's camera pieces all over the forest. The motor controller itself in a Pelican case has been eaten apart. And it's just like electronics sitting in a pond. There's hanging 100 feet off the ground in a tree, like all over the place. Can't even.
They got a new toy.
Oh yeah, and I'm like, it was that teenager. He just stuck around that night and just went to town on my there's like 100 people out there, right, all ready to go. They got like tables and monitors and all and I'm just like, we're not filming this thing today. So they pivoted. They went off to do their own thing. I spent the whole day taking all the extra parts because this thing was like a brand new prototype. We had just built one to shoot with, but I brought all the extra parts in case anything would happen. Well, so I spent the whole day rebuilding it. So we get back out there the next morning, get it going. And as we're testing the system, the camera is running, we're rolling, and it's climbing up the vine, but we're still waiting for that teenager orangutan to come back. And he's being ornery. He doesn't want to show up, and it's taking a while. But then out of the bush comes a mom orangutan and her baby, and they're just curious. They want to see what's going on. So they come over, and the mom knows that the man goes up the tree, so she starts going up the vine, but baby can't make it. And there's a bush next to the beginning of this giant tree, and the baby can't get across the tree to get to the vine. It's having a hard time. So while we're rolling, the mom comes down, gets over to the bush, grabs the baby, kind of chucks her behind her onto the vine, and they both go up together. Meanwhile, we just happened to be filming the whole thing. The director's crying. The DP's like, this is the best shot I've ever got in my life. People are losing it, but all quiet while this whole scene's happening. And it made it into the final thing. And it was like, typically when a cable cam shot's used, I'm always like, roll on the whole thing, go as long as you can, but they never do. They use like 5 seconds or whatever. This was a 1:30 long shot, like the whole epicenter of the entire piece that they were doing. And yeah, I think it's my best piece of work I've ever done.
No, that's cool. Awesome.
Sick,
that's amazing.
sick. So if people want to watch it, where do they go? They go to Apple.
They got to own one of these $5,000 headsets, which is a bummer.
It's only in the
and
headset.
It's the Apple immersion on the set, but I think we're about to see Apple come out with a far more cheaper, accessible piece of equipment. And yeah, I think that whole world's about to change. But currently, there's only a selection of people in the world to be able to watch it. Yeah.
I wanted to ask about, because the cable cam system, like you designed them all. You designed your first one. You keep tinkering with them, or like how did that come about? The whole cable cam career.
Well, it started with, I worked at a company called Zip Trek Eco Tours up in Whistler, and just a bum rock climber trying to get a job. And, and like most rock climbers without a degree or any sort of real education, I was working construction. And so luckily I got a job building zip lines and aerial platforms and suspension bridges and stuff with this company. And I worked for them for 10 years. And as I worked more and more for them, I realized that I had a knack for understanding cableways and everything that was involved with these complicated systems. So by the time I finished with them, I was designing new pieces of equipment and like high-speed braking systems, and I was on AutoCAD full-time at the end. So I really was getting into mechanical design, and I discovered I had a knack for that, but no education. I just taught myself. And at the time there was AutoCAD, the original version, and the owners of the company really wanted to design in it, but none of us could figure out how to use it. But then some of these new AutoCADs were coming out, Inventor, SolidWorks, and they didn't know about it at the time. So I got a hold of one of these systems, learned it pretty short amount of time. All of a sudden it's like intuitive and it's like attainable. Reverse engineered some of the things that I was building for them, showed it to them, and they're like, "Oh my God, you can do AutoCAD? This is incredible!" And so then I just got hired full time to do that, and that was at a time when they were getting engineers to build things for them, where it was like they would spend $30,000 and the system wouldn't work properly because the engineers didn't understand the dynamics of cableways systems. So anyway, I got really lucky, started doing that. Well, then my friends, Brian Smith with Real Water Productions, they were kayaking and sending some crazy lines around Squamish, Ashley Box Canyon as one of them. And they're like, "Hey, do you think you could set up one of your zip lines to film us kayaking? No one's ever done that before." So we went out there, we took like 1/2-inch cable, giant spool of it, threw it in the back of Brian's truck, dragged it across the canyon, set up this heavy line, big anchors, huge trees, cranked the sucker up. Then we put a climbing portaledge hanging from it on a spreader bar with 2 pulleys, and we literally rode the thing down chasing kayakers. I'd be up near the cable, I'd have my gloved hands controlling the speed, Brian would be hanging off the front with the camera, and we just chased the kayakers. And people lost their minds. They'd never seen anything like it before.
What year was that? Would that have been?
Oh man, I'm so bad for dates.
Right.
I couldn't tell you.
But like a decade ago, probably, or more?
This is over 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. And I got a big pump out of the reactions of the kayaking world and how much they loved it.
I bet.
And I wanted to take it farther, but the cable stuff was crazy. I think we did 3 like that.
Amazing.
And at one point, I just finished this. At one point, we were zipping down, and we were going to hit a wall that was jutting out from the canyon. So we had pulled the cable to the side with an extra haul. Well, that haul gave way. A prusik slipped or something while we were riding it, and the whole cable dropped like 5 feet. And we thought we were going to go into this Class 5 river. Scared the living shit out of us. And at that point, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do these anymore. And then the boys were like, okay, well, what about these cable cam systems that they got in NFL? You should build one of those.
Right, unmanned.
Yeah, electronic system,
Yeah.
Remote control kind of idea. I knew nothing about any of this stuff, and it was a long, hard road. Ignorance is bliss, as they say.
I think it's awesome though that you started it with your own like hillbilly adventurous way where you're just like, okay, let's ride this magic carpet down the river and make it happen, and then going from there into like what somebody or people have set up in the NFL and merging that together. But I think like you have such an adventurous spirit, and so to take that into a cable cam world that's like shuttling across a field or something and combining those two, I think must have been pretty satisfying.
Totally. I mean, I always had an interest in robotics and engineering, but I didn't have the mind to get through university. I think I took calculus in university like 3 times. I got like 53% my 3rd time. I never tried harder than anything else. And so I had like dropped out and became a full-time rock climber,
Yeah.
But I always had that interest in going down that road. So I finally had an opportunity. But again, I didn't have the classic experience and education. So how was I going to do that?
But also, like, rock climbing's interesting that way because ropes and pulleys and systems, and you just start to like, it feels like, all the best riggers that I know in the film world, they all come from a rock climbing background.
Right. Yeah.
Like you kind of, I guess you just get a comfort for the concepts of how that stuff works.
Again, I think I got lucky in the fact that ropes and rigging, cableway systems, all that is a dynamic, weird thing to understand. And without hard experience for years doing that, you just can't design or work in a world around that stuff. And I saw that. It was regularly Zip Trek Eco Tours would hire these engineers. They had the education, they had the resources, and they, imagine like an office with 50 people all working on something, and they were unable to get the job done. But I was regularly able to get us a step farther in whatever we were trying to accomplish. And I was like, what is going on here? Why am I able to do this without this education and resources? And it was all because of the weird ass experience and understanding ropes and cables and rigging. And so that's what happened with this cable cam stuff too, as I was able to get past those difficulties in the education because I had the experience and understanding it.
I suspect too, feeling comfortable with exposure too, like being comfortable on the side of a cliff or shuttling across a Class 5 river, Yeah, I think that probably comes into play too,
Yeah, you're definitely setting up systems that could have a lot of risk involved, whether it's like crashing a heavy system into the public or even just breaking expensive equipment,
That's right.
And then you're putting these things into places where your own personal safety is involved. So yeah, it's I think being a sponsored athlete, rock climber, going after risky endeavors and ventures, which is such a huge part of my life when I started my cable cam company.
How did that start? The rock climbing. Where did you grow up? On Vancouver Island?
I grew up in Victoria.
Right.
I got into climbing when I was 15.
Right. In the locally around Victoria?
Around Victoria, yeah. I remember a very specific moment. I was in grade 11. There was an announcement come to the multi-purpose room. We're going to talk about new things happening at the school. And they're like, we have a climbing wall. And I was like, okay, what is that? Like, to me, it sounded like a lump of concrete with some dents in it. You know, I was like, okay. And then they described it a bit, and I just was curious. So I went down there, checked it out, and they had literally an overhanging plywood wall with bolt-on holds. Blew my mind. That looked like the coolest thing. I was already huge into climbing trees and building tree forts, and
kids like to climb.
Yeah, totally. And I was definitely one of those kids. So it captured my imagination like nothing else. And up to this point, I had nothing that really captured my imagination in the same way. I sucked at all the sports. Any team sports, I was horrible at. I was always the last person to be picked. I was bad at all the classes. Like, you know, girls didn't like me. Like, all of it. High school was brutal for me. I just hated the entire experience. I discovered climbing, and it's just like this massive light bulb went off. And from that moment on, my life really began, I felt like.
That's funny. I think there's a lot of people that'll be listening to that can really relate to finding an individual sport that they really latched onto and gave them purpose. The people that didn't get picked first might discover skiing or climbing or paddling or any one of these sports that we love so much out here. And that's a great feeling when that happens.
You're a climber. What, was that the same for you? No friends in high school?
Well, mine was a little bit different. I was on a bad path and getting in a lot of trouble with the cops and stuff like that. And when I moved out here, I found some folks with a really good moral compass and were really interested in being in the outdoors. And I always had an adventurous spirit, but where I grew up in Ontario, it was a little bit harder to find a productive outlet. Yeah. So when I moved out here and met like Jimmy Martinello and some amazing people, they really influenced me in a great way. And
you guys have climbed together, Matt?
We have a little bit. It's funny, Matt and I have known each other for years, but we've just became close recently, and it's been really great because I've always loved to hear about Matt's adventures, and like just through the years. And I like technical things too. I'm a rigger in the film industry as well, and like Matt's a legend in the film industry. People know him from all over. And I think there's lots of things we could talk about. Like he invented this thing called the anti-cam, which I want to get into. And
all right, but before we get into that, let's take a quick break. Hey, buddy, have you got the time? Or is it time to get yourself a new Citizen watch? Did you know their EcoDrive watches are powered solely by light, any kind of light, or that their atomic timekeeping watches are constantly syncing with atomic clocks all over the planet to ensure your watch's margin of error never exceeds 1 second every 100,000 years? Check out that kind of wild tech and all their great watch options at citizenwatch.com. Yeah, well, let's jump from high school climber to professional climber and then into the anti-cam. But like, when and how did that transition go for you to all of a sudden you're getting paid to rock climb from just being a kid?
Yeah. I just wanted to add that I got in a lot of trouble as a kid too. We were stealing cars. I don't even know if my parents know that. Like I was going down the wrong. I totally could relate to that. And climbing, I met people in climbing that were just, like you said, down to earth and had great values, and they were doing badass stuff. Yeah. Without having to be bad.
Without getting arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Great. It's a nice way to change things up.
Totally. So, in high school, I met a bunch of people like this. My math teacher, I remember Mr. Mason, he was exactly that. He was just like, this is awesome. You love climbing. Let's give you some opportunity. And I think in grade 12, I was introduced to competitive climbing. And so I think it might have been Mr. Mason. He was like, you should go to Vancouver, compete in the first ever North American Junior Championships. And so I did that. I signed up. You have to understand, I'm like by far the best climber at my high school. No one else, other people were climbing 5'10". I'm like 5'12". I'm so far beyond everybody else. So I'm just like, I'm going to kill this thing. This is going to be great. I get there, get my ass handed to me. Everybody's so good. There's people, other climbers have coaches, all this stuff. But I did get 5th. And I even beat Chris Sharma at the time. He was a couple years younger than me. And I was just like, I didn't even know who he was. I just see this kid like training in the behind the scenes. I'm like, oh my God, these kids have skills. And I just beat them out of pure power. I was like elbows out, like just no technique. I didn't know how to drop knee. I didn't know how to Gaston. I didn't know anything. And I was like beating these kids. But I came away with hugely humbled and going, I got some stuff to learn, you know? And right after that, Craig X opened up in Victoria, the first public climbing wall. And Nikolai Galadza from Joe Rockheads, he was running that gym, came out, started this climbing gym with a couple other friends of his, and he took me under his wing. It was my first real job. I was setting roots in the gym. First paid, but then eventually just to get a free membership. And those guys were like, you don't know what you're doing as a climber, but you got the interest. Let's start training you. And so they were teaching me all the climbing techniques, but also like rigging too. Like they really showed me, they were like father figures for me. It really helped a lot. And so at that point I started getting better. And at a very young age, I think I was just out of high school, I came to Squamish on a trip. I met another teacher from an elementary school who was down at Fleming Beach, which is a well-known crag in Victoria, right?
Like Esquimalt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was introduced to that spot from my mom. She's like, hey, I grew up in Esquimalt. There's this rock out there. You should come check it out. So she showed it to me. So anyway, I didn't know anything about climbing. I went to the store and bought enough rope to double the cliff. You know, I mean, back then you just pulled off rope off a spool. You didn't get it in a certain length, whatever. And anyway, I was just like dicking around. Didn't know how to tie any knots. This is even before Craig X. And this teacher's like, he just sees me like tying 17 knots in a row to try to be safe. He's like, you need to learn something. Why don't you come hang out with me? So he brought me to Squamish for the first time. And I remember coming down that highway and see this guy and seeing the chief in the distance and being like, oh shit, this is way bigger than anything I've ever imagined.
It's legitimately like 15 or 20 times higher than Fleming Beach.
Yeah. And I was like, I had that feeling of like, I was like a big fish in a small pond, you know, back home. And now I am just a microfish in this huge Squamish world. But I was so excited about it. Oh my God. Yeah. But anyway, so then I came to Squamish and I had this dream of doing an expedition. I don't know what it was. I wasn't, so I could climb maybe harder than the kids at school. But in the grand scheme of things, I wasn't that good of a free climber. But I was a technical kind of minded person. So I was getting into A climbing. And to me, the coolest adventures I could have was getting high up on the big stone on very blank rock, any means possible. And at the time, that meant A climbing. And you could have cool adventures like being on a portaledge, hauling your stereo and chocolate and whiskey up there and hang out with your friends. It was just so much fun. So I climbed a bunch of big walls on the Chief. Then I went down to Zion and Yosemite, climbed El Cap a bunch of times. And I got it in my mind I wanted to do an expedition. And I'm only like 19 at the time. And I was like, I want to go to Baffin Island. I could see in the National Geographic and other magazines that it looked like the place to go if you wanted a big wall climb. But again, I was just, 19 years old and
working,
just getting started.
Not really working, or
I was still going to university. I was just starting to go to university and working the summers for my dad doing steel fabrication, just being a bitch under all the men and being yelled at. I remember being yelled at so much and just like being so tired, little skinny runt of a kid, falling asleep at the drill press, foreman screaming at me, get back to work, Maddaloni, like just ridiculous hard work, take whatever cash I have and go climbing as much as I could.
As you should.
So we, at just 20 years old, I dragged a couple friends of mine, John Miller and Ben Domenic, and we went to Baffin Island and we did a big wall. And that really opened the door because it felt like the most impossible thing. I think it was like $25,000 between three guys at that, we're talking like 25 years ago or something, it was a lot of money for little punk kids. And we did a 3,500 foot wall overhanging the whole way over the frozen ocean. We were on the wall for 25 days in a portaledge in minus 20-degree weather. And we got up that damn thing. And I came away from that trip going, I can fucking do anything. you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's where I was like, well, what about sponsorship? What about, you know what I mean? I just started growing from there. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need an education. I don't need any of this stuff. I can do whatever the hell I want in my life. I just need to focus and try, you know?
About talking about the boys that you went on that trip with, was that a first experience of that magnitude for them as well?
Oh, absolutely.
So between the three of you, you probably fed off each other's strengths and supported each other, and each brought something to the table, I would imagine. And
Just winging it completely, all of you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely done the most big wall climbing, but the other two who had done a bunch on their own. It was cool because Ben Domenic was my main climbing partner at the time, and we had just met John, but really Ben and John didn't know each other. And like many trips after that, I had introduced two people that really didn't know each other much. It kind of made a team, and then those two became really good friends, and it was the same with that trip. They really hit it off.
Has it ever gone sideways where the people didn't hit it off and the team fell apart on the trip, or are you pretty good track record for putting a team together?
No, I think we had a pretty good track record that way. Never, if anything, people would have issues with me, not so much with each other. You know,
Right.
talk about that. What's that look like? What kind of issues?
I don't know, man. Like small kid in high school. I got picked on a lot of bullies, and I just wouldn't put up with shit. So I was just big mouth, and yeah, I think that was my main problem in school. I just running from fight to fight.
And I imagine you've probably always had a strong vision of what you like, and probably are a pretty visual character. I imagine that you can visualize things pretty handily and get something in your mind, and maybe you want to bring that to fruition.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You ended up living in Squamish? Like you finished university, or did you drop out and move to Squamish, or how did?
I think I was planning on going back after 2 years. And oh man, my dad. So I'm working for my dad. I'm in Victoria. It's summertime, trying to make whatever bucks to help pay for the next year of university. My parents are helping me, bless their souls. But they're like, if you know, you've got to like carry the weight as much as you can. So you got to work. But I'm just getting more and more into climbing. And of course, with my big mouth and how that goes, I'm small runty kid. I'm out on the back lot of one of these shops working, and there's these huge pieces of steel, and I'm there with this like mag drill that magnets onto the steel, and you have to push with your hand to get the drill bit to go through super thick steel, and there's a billion holes to do. So I'm getting tired, so I got my foot against the thing, and I'm getting super accurate, getting it right, and I'm drilling through a piece of rubber mat that have already got holes in it, so I'm using that to line everything up. And my dad walks by while I got my foot on the thing, and he's like, "Hey, don't use your foot." And I'm like, I said something like, "I know what I'm doing, whatever." Well, the damn holes were off badly, and it's an expensive piece of steel. And so I get in trouble. I'm talking back. He's like, "You're fired. You're out of here," you know? So I go home, and I'm like, fuck that guy. Fuck this. I'm going to take whatever bucks I had, and I had like maybe $1,000 or something, and I'm going to Squamish. And my buddy Chris Kruger picked me up, and we headed to Squamish. And just as I'm leaving the house, my dad gets home, and I had like packed up my room. I'm like, I'm totally out of here. And he's like, no. I just was trying to teach you a lesson. Like, it turned out that the thick mats were like expanding with the heat of the day. You know, you would drill them all in the morning, whatever. Like right. It's not your fault, you know. And I just want to teach you a lesson. I'm like, it's all good, Dad. It's time for me to go, you know. And I was out of there. And yeah, it was pretty funny.
And then you end up here.
So I come to Squamish, and I don't have anything. I don't have a place to stay. I'm like in a tent down by the Squamish River, out in front of the Sheriff's Badge, and I don't have a plan. And I'm in my tent, and I think after that, the winter comes. I move into the Mission House. I don't know if you ever heard of that one.
Legendary residence in Squamish. Lots of shenanigans.
Yep. Oh, you know what? I apologize. Let's rewind a little bit. I went from the tent. Then I met a girl who had a van. I lived in that with her for a year. Then we broke up. I kept the van. Lived in it for another 3 years. Then I moved into a storage locker I think there was another 7 people and climbers who were all living in the storage lockers down there, including an RCMP officer in training at the time, which we probably know. And then I finally got an apartment. So we're talking like 6 years before I got my first place in Squamish.
Crazy. So you were able to really dirtbag it and put your energy and your funds and everything into just climbing as much as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd do trips down to Yosemite as an example, and like I would show up with just enough money for maybe a week or two. Then we'd run out and I'd be like, pilfering cans of food from the corner store or collecting cans or showing up at the pizza deck and like waiting for, families to walk away from their pizza and grabbing whatever we could. And
And
full dirtbag.
And were you tinkering around creating your own gear? Because eventually that's how I came most aware of you, was with the anti-cam. We did a story, right? This new piece of equipment to grip instead of wedge. And
right.
But were you dicking around with stuff and making gear kind of before that piece, or was that your first time? Like really engineering?
I guess so, because with climbing, it's very much engineering your way up the rock, and you're just kind of sitting there at the high point of wherever you are on the pitch going, I need to get up however much distance. And sometimes, it might be putting in a piece of gear, hammering in a piton, but every now and then you got to come up with something a little more unusual. So one route we put up in Powell River, Funksoul Brother wall, it was like a 15-foot hook throw. So you just get a small piece of rope and start throwing this thing like it's a
grappling
hook, or whatever. So it, that kind of climbing is very inventive, and you're always chatting with your friends about how you can, work some sort of thing into something to get you a little bit higher. But, like in the anti-cam, I was already working for Zip Trek EcoTours. I was already on AutoCAD, and so I was into mechanical design.
Right.
And the way that story starts, I'm trying to remember how it all goes, but I do remember climbing the Grand Wall one day with some friends and looking at the guillotine flake. And this like thin flake that starts off an inch thick, it's just a sheet of granite that sits against the wall, maybe by a couple inches. And as it moves from left to right, it gets thicker. Starts an inch thick and it finishes off at like a 1.5 feet or something like that.
And how far is that from the start to the finish of it?
It's like a full pitch sideways.
Right.
And if you were to free climb it, you put your fingers underneath it, undercling it, and you shove your feet against the wall with no holds, perfectly vertical, and you just power undercling the thing. But knowing with climbing, if you were to put a cam or a piton behind it, it's so thin that it would just keep moving. It would expand and bend farther and farther out from the wall until your piece fell out. And if you expanded it far enough,
the whole thing
might come off. And we're talking like a 2,000-pound guillotine flake, hence the name. So I'm looking at this thing going, that would be a cool pitch to free. It's obviously climbable. But if you were just to bolt the wall underneath, that's kind of boring. Wouldn't it be cool if you had something that just clamped on? So that started the whole thought process. But I couldn't figure out how the piece of device would work.
Yeah.
And I think 10 years went by until one day Brian Smith and Rearwater Productions and Fitz Cahal with a production called Dirtbag Diaries were doing a online show. And no one had ever done this before. I think they learned from BAM Film Festival. They came up with this idea to put together. They got sponsors. It was like literally the first time anybody had created a show in this nature where they would get, say, 1 or 2 sponsors. They would show it on their site on a particular day. You could see a new episode every week. No one had ever done anything like this before. So these guys had this idea, and they knew this was brewing. And I'm like, hey, guys, I got an idea for you. What if I invented this device and I climbed this thing? But we don't know if I'll be successful or not. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be successful or not. I don't know if the design's going to work. I don't know if I'm going to be able to climb it. I don't know anything. But whether it's successful or not, it's going to be entertaining. And I think I even like laid it out in like episode by episode kind of thing. And they loved it. So we did it. But the main reason I even proposed it to them was I finally had the idea that would make it work. And it's, I got one right here.
We should get some pictures of it. But yeah, go ahead. Keep talking
so
about
I'm holding the anti-cam here. It's got 2 big arms on it, with a big bar and a spring, and it if you just let it go, it'll clamp together. And so if you spread it out and stick it on to the flake, it'll hold itself until you pull down this little nut down the threaded bar to really crank it on. And then it's got these 4 lobes operating in the opposite of a cam, and they, rotate to take up the little bits of differences in the shape of the rock. But the part that eluded me was this bar on each arm, and essentially what it does is it just changes its angle on the bar. So the combination of the bar and these rotating cylinders was the breakthrough. And so I'm like, guys, I think I have it. Let's try this thing. And so I built a bunch of prototypes. They weren't as advanced as this one, and we took them into the bluffs. And I would put in a bunch of gear, climb a bit higher, stick on the anti-cam, whale off, and first bunch didn't hold at all. It came whipping off, and I think in the video that we made, one slams into my arm and hurts me, and it was a bit of a shit show, but it was entertaining, And then I would go back to the computer and work on it, and then a friend of mine, Dan Dempsey, would help with Squamish Fabricating, would help use his milling machine and help me make them and stuff. And I had it all figured out in AutoCAD, so I could do strength analysis and know how much material I could take away and what it could handle. And it was pretty cool. And we eventually made a rack of these things. And then I put them on my harness and went up there and did it, free with a piece of gear that I had invented. It was pretty fun.
That's amazing. And now I believe it sits in a climbing museum beside the legendary Ray Jardine and his camming devices. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think it was Ray Jardine and the original cam device that inspired me to make it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Was it a secretive
so cool.
thing, or T-Mac, had you been hearing about it during the process as a local climber, or were you guys, because it was for the show, was it secretive?
I heard about it afterwards, but I definitely heard about it, and I think a lot of people did. And yeah, actually, that might have been one of the first things that I heard about you for sure. And it was just really, really interesting for sure.
Right on.
That's wild to see one in the metal. Yeah, and of course you've made millions off this device, eh?
Give it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Totally.
Has anyone ever used it for ever again, or you lend them out to people? Or?
Well, first of all, I knew right away that this thing was way too
how much does it weigh?
I don't know. Here you go. You tell me.
Oh yeah, it's not that bad.
It's not. Well, it's made out of, I think it's 6,000 series aluminum. All the cams and stuff are 7,000, so even lighter.
I would just love to be rocked up at the crag and watch everybody be like, "What the fuck is that?"
Oh, yeah. Totally. But yeah, I knew right away that it was never going to be
specialty piece.
A very, very specialty piece. So I just posted all the drawings and everything.
Oh
online.
yeah, how did that go? You made it open source, the design.
I just made it open source, and it's had so little interest as far as as far as people asking, because I just put it out there. I'm like, if you want a rack of these things, you have another idea, or even if you just want to repeat guillotine flake, here they are, and nobody asked to borrow them. It's hilarious. But Brett Harrington did get one from me not too long ago for a route I think she was doing in Spain, some tufa thing. And the idea was she was going to use it to help protect it. Excuse me. I think at the end she found other ways to get up the route, whether she was slinging thing. I don't know what she did, but she did it without it. So that was close. But I thought that was pretty cool.
Do you continually have now, have you got another piece or idea that you're working on, or have you shifted it over to, more the film and the cable cam and the UAVs and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, I did bring one more device with me, something else very unusual, but most of that creative mechanical juices went into the cable cam stuff.
Right.
And really the direction there, where I've been able to stay competitive is, mostly I'm still a dirtbag climber. I don't make millions of dollars to throw into some of these systems. It would be so much fun to have unlimited resources, but some of the big cable cam companies out there, or the big cable cam companies have multi-million-dollar systems, and they do things like, the Super Bowl and all that stuff. But where I make my mark and our riggers is we just do unusual, difficult projects that you kind of need to be a climber or climber-minded to be able to get into.
Yeah.
Like that thing with in Borneo, where we're deep in the jungle and you have like an afternoon to set your stuff up, and the budgets aren't there either, and I'm just trying to think what would be some of the other cool stuff. Like we did one in Wadi Rum for the Las Vegas Sphere with Alex Honnold. I can't say exactly what we did there, but that there's no way that you could get into such a difficult place to film Alex and what we were trying to accomplish if it wasn't for sort of the shooting from the hip lightweight systems that we were building.
I wanted to ask, what's the advantage of the cable cam over the new drone technology? Because I know you work with both.
Yeah, sure.
But
yeah.
Is it a noise thing? Is it drones just aren't precise enough to go on that kind of line sometimes, or what makes the cable cam still relevant?
Yeah. That's I ask myself the same question from time to time, for sure, as things are getting crazy in that drone world. But we keep getting calls, and the big one lately is the size of the camera.
Right.
And like the Las Vegas Sphere, Apple Vision Pro, things like this are just huge, heavy systems. I mean, the Las Vegas Sphere one was a 65-pound camera system with a 55-pound battery that needed to be carried. So we're talking hundreds of pounds of weight. Outside of that, it's quiet. You're not going to hear anything, So
which
if you got
is good
dialogue,
for orangutans.
Good for orangutans, good for wildlife, good for people having dialogue, talking to each other. But also, like, if you're on a big set and there's actors and they're trying to do their thing, when the actors get it right, when they get their right performance or whatever, you don't want to be waiting around for somebody else's piece of equipment. And drones have a very short amount of time they can be in the air. Whereas a cable cam, we'll just get our repeatable shot and we'll just do it over and over
Back
again
to
for
ones,
every single attempt until the actor gets it right, and then we're good. We're done. And that goes a long way.
When you're out adventuring, how much time do you get to spend, out on these kind of old school big rock or big mountain or free diving or paddling or whatever? How much adventuring do you get to do in a year now? As an adult?
Well, I'd say most of what I'm doing now is work adventures,
right.
Which is completely on purpose. I think I've, focused my interests towards, like, say, for example, documentary film, because it's such small crews in really interesting places. So like a lot of stuff I've been doing with River Road the last couple of years. This year I got to spend a lot of time in the Arctic, which is super cool. And so being able to, as a family man, I got 3 young girls at home, and a wife, and, to be able to get time away where I'm just spending a lot of money doing fun things without them is hard to sell. You know
Totally.
what I mean? But if I can go have rad adventures where I come back feeling fulfilled and I get a paycheck at the same time, that's easy. You know what I mean?
Win-win.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
But I'm still getting out.
And
Hey,
I
Trev?
also, we get out and dream big and make things happen. And I think that I also, one of the things that I find you and I talk about a lot is our families and how we bring our families into things, and, getting older and what's important to us, and, legacy, and to sort of show our kids that this is important to us. And how to mitigate having family with these big adventures like Feet was just asking about. And, a lot of times I find we bring our families now on cool adventures, and that's kind of what it's become. And, I think, do you want to speak a little bit about how you mitigate family and still dreaming big?
And how old are the girls?
You're keeping your identity.
I have blended family right now. I'm my wife of 8 years, and she has her two girls, which are now 11 and 14, and then my daughter, who's 13. And when I first got together with my wife, we were envisioning our first, like within like the first month, we're like, let's build an overlander. Let's go all the way down to South America. Let's take the kids out of school for a year. Let's go for it, And then we're like, oh, we got exes. They're not going to really be into that too much. Right. And it kind of like shattered that dream. But 5 years after being together, we did go to Africa for 3 months. We bought a kind of an overland machine, a Toyota with 2 rooftop tents, and brought the climbing gear, brought the surfboards, and we did a month in South Africa, a month in Namibia, and a month in Botswana with the girls. Bless our exes for letting us do that. It was definitely hard on them, but every week we would edit a little thing of what we were doing and post it so that they could see. And that was incredible. It was a total bucket thing to do, and we knew before we went that it would be a big impact for those girls. And it's so cool to watch them rewatch the things we made about it and to see how it's affected them, and they're pretty young. I mean, we're like, it's a bunch of years ago now, and we've done a couple other trips since then, but it's just so incredible to see how much they grew out of those trips,
Yeah.
Yeah.
T-Mac, you've got a couple daughters. You take them on big trips as well?
I do, yeah. I've been really lucky that way that they love it. They're super fun to hang out with, and they're also really capable athletes. So it's the caliber's really high, and so that's really fun too to watch them throw down. And they're funny. They're not too serious. They like I like that. I like that when people can, I don't know, do something in a really capable way, but also be really fun to hang out with and enjoy themselves. And you're joking and telling stories. And, I really value that camaraderie and the shenanigans and the funny parts of it. Like I got a funny story about my one daughter, Annabelle, when we were in Australia and she was 5 years old. And dumpster diving is kind of a thing that climbers and probably other people have done over the years. And I remember being in this small town in Australia and holding Annabelle by her feet and lowering her into the dumpster where she'd pull out cartons of eggs and loaves of bread. And we'd fill the car and go back to the campsite and make French toast for everybody. And she loves that story.
Good life skills.
It's good, like
Good
that's the
life
type
skills.
that's the stuff I love. I just love that funny stuff. And back to Matt here, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was Squamish had this really funny time. Like now, I think Squamish has always been awesome in all its iterations, but there was a time before you had like the super affluent climbers that, are around and which are awesome. But back in the day when Squamish was a little rough, back when you were climbing a lot 2 feet, you remember back in those days, it was a funny place and there was a lot of characters. And I really love that time period in Squamish, like when you could just sort of rock up to the chief and whatever you wanted and stay there all summer and people had buses and this and that. And I think about Matt and 2 other Victoria climbers, which are pretty legendary. And there's a lot of funny stories and a lot of shit went down with you boys. And that, of course, is Andrew Boyd and James Laurie, otherwise known as Jimmy Scar. Probably the most storied Squamish climber, usually for nothing to do with climbing. But anyway, those 2 guys are characters, and the 3 of you guys really brought a lot of new rooting and ethics to Squamish, because all 3 of you guys cared a lot about climbing ethic. And would you talk about, like, were you inspired by those guys? Did you guys butt heads, or like what was your relationship with those guys?
Yeah, I mean Jimmy, he's I used to ride my bike over to his house before we even owned cars or had our license, and go climbing and sleep in the same bed with him, because we had nowhere else in whatever places we were staying at with our parents, and then get out to the crag and go climbing. And we both met Andrew as a couple years older, and like Andrew was like a real climber. You know, he had like a rack of pins and like climbing paraphernalia, walls, and you know, how-to books, and he was just like a real climber. He'd done things, you know, and both of us were just looking up to him so much. And I always felt like, even, you know, all years later, 10, 20 years later, I always felt like Andrew was a little bit ahead of where we're at, you know. But yeah, there was a little bit of a competitiveness there. And then I definitely saw the world a little differently than Jimmy. I think that, what did he used to call me? He used to call me the grinning weasel. I remember that nickname. And it was like, it came from me just being so positive all the time. And he's like, how can you be so damn positive? The world's a hard place, man. You know?
those guys are a bit dark.
They're a bit dark.
There was that time in climbing where you kind of, a darkness seemed to permeate all of climbing. You remember that, eh? It was like Mark Twight talking about the dark side of alpinism, and that was always. I never understood that part, to be quite honest.
But I'm interested in, you're talking about the ethics, and you know, even earlier you said I don't want to bolt underneath the guillotine flake. What's you know, pins? I don't know what would happen if you tried to bang a piton into the chief right now. Like, would people yell at you, or how has the ethics changed since you arrived here in town?
Well, you know, rock or climbing in general is such an old sport in the world, and Canada's first publication ever was a Canadian Alpine Journal. So, you know, it's been around for a long time, and traditionally, the people interested in climbing were sort of like these. How did you say, these affluential people who, you know, education, a little bit more money involved. And so unlike my mountain biking friends, you know, where it's like tailgate parties, you know, it's fast and hard. And it's such a different scene. Even though the same people are in both worlds, whatever. But that's traditionally kind of where it came from. So then there would just be lots of downtime to talk about the ethics of it, you know, and it'd be like, you know, those guys would get so worked up about, you know, if somebody put in an anchor on top, or it was a natural anchor or whatever, and they would go and they would rip the thing out and then, you know, bring it back and be like, we got that anchor, you know, it's back to the way it was or whatever. And that definitely was the sort of norm. It was always about the ethics of it. But I think in climbing in general, it's traditionally been that way. Like, what is it? Who are the two big players on El Cap? It was Royal Robbins and
Warren Harding.
Yeah. Over the Wall of Early Morning Light.
That's right.
Remember that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Warren puts the route up. It's probably the hardest aid route in the world at the time. He put in 1 billion bolts. Robin gets all up. You know, he's like, I'm gonna repeat it. And I'm gonna rip out all the bolts. He starts bashing away at them. He gets a couple pitches in and goes, this is badass, actually. This is some of the best climbing I've ever seen. Changes his mind, leaves the rest of them, and then finishes the route, and has a very different feel for Warren. But those two, the clashing of those minds, whereas Warren's so, I feel like, you know, salt of the earth, like Jimmy and Andrew, versus Royal, you know, where he's coming from, you know, education or whatever. And you just have those two worlds sort of bashing, and Squamish has always had that. I mean, the Kevin McLeans and you know, the Mark Bourdons of the Squamish world, you know.
That's true. There really are two different camps in climbing, and at its essence. And thinking back to Harding and Royal Robbins, that was a big deal, and for him to pay him credit for that, I remember was a big deal. And climbing's interesting.
I had a moment exactly like that in Squamish where I completely flipped, and it was Perry Beckham, Damian Kelly, and I had done the sheriff's badge, and we had looked over to the right and saw a line that had like a couple pitches done, but the rest of it not finished, and we knew it was Perry's line, so we called him up and said, "Hey, Perry, Are you finished with that thing? Are you getting ever back on it?" And he was like total climbing hero of ours and all that. And Perry's like, "Yes, I am. I'm getting on it next weekend." And he had been on it in like 15 years or something, you know, whatever. So he just got back on it. He soloed it. He finished the line. Awesome. So then I went back up there with some friends, but then they left and I ended up by myself, and I ended up doing a solo ascent. And I got it all up in my mind that I was, essentially I was like eating the route and past a couple rivets that I didn't see because I was putting in pitons. And then I realized after I'd passed them that, oh, it's been drilled here. Well, that's lame. I'm just going to hammer those off the wall and make the route better. Well, Perry calls me up after because I must have bragged to somebody else. He's like, what are you talking about, you asshole? You can't go. That's my route. It's up to me to it's like my vision of whatever, you don't get to. And I was like, I totally got schooled in that moment. He said it like it should be. And at that point I realized that, yeah, it's an expression of each person and what they bring to the table. What right do I have to change that, And that was such a big learning experience for me. But I totally can relate that to Robin and Warren in their climb,
And now,
Thanks, Perry.
we now we have the internet, and we have the Squamish Rock Climbers Facebook group, and how, like, from an outsider, it's just mostly comedy. It's almost as good as Squamish Moms for people fighting with each other and throwing barbs, but. But how representative is that Facebook group or that discourse on there to the actual local community? Like, is it mellower than it seems?
Dude, I'd like to comment on that, but I do not pay attention. I got 3 kids and a job. Like, I don't have time to be looking
you
at
guys
this
are
stuff.
probably that's probably the wise call. But it's
what?
pretty funny.
I think
I bet it is.
I don't either, but it makes me want to go look at it because, I think that it's funny. But I think the thing is, I think we're at an age where our values have long been established. So, the new stuff that's going on online or whatever, it just feels like the new crew in, I'm more interested in, I don't know, being out adventuring somewhere new. And I think that's probably how you look at it too, I would think.
The older I get, the more I just want to be on my own.
Yeah,
left
exactly.
alone, get out in the wilderness and do my own thing for sure.
We're starting to run a little close to start winding things down. But Matt, I wanted to ask, other than team sports, is there anything that you're really crappy at? Is there anything? How are you at ice skating? Or is there something like that where you just can't do it, but everyone else can?
Man, lately it's been music.
Right.
My whole family crushes music, and I'm just the worst. But you know what? I did buy a drum set. And I did learn my first full tune, and it's Seven Nation Army, which is probably the easiest thing ever to learn on drums. But I am proud, dude.
Yeah.
I figured that shit out, and it's like my brain is melting, smoke's coming out of my ears, and it's that combined with my wife's also super into dancing. It's her whole life,
right?
And she's been trying to get me to West Coast swing with her, which has got to be the hardest partner dance ever. And I find that those two worlds are so similar, where you're doing 2 different things with different appendages, whatever. And I have such a hard time with it. But, I have the very first inkling of having fun doing that, but it's taken a lot of effort. And again, my mind is melting. So, I know through and through that you got to do stuff like that. You got to break through those boundaries if you're going to live to an old age, because if you're not learning new stuff, you're just it's all gonna fall apart,
Yeah. What about is there anything you're afraid of? Snakes, spiders, anything like that?
Oh man, what am I afraid of? What am I afraid of?
Being bored?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was terrified of free diving when I started.
Right.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think I had one time with Tim Emmett. We went out to that 400-foot frigate out at what island is that?
The Annapolis.
The Annapolis, yeah. And I'd been down there in the dark, but it kind of lights up once you get low, right? But this time it was super murky water. It was pitch black, and we dove down to like 25 meters, and you're just following a rope into the darkness. And there was a light at the bottom of that rope that Tim had set up, and I got within a couple feet of that thing and couldn't see it in the darkness. That was terrifying.
I had the same experience. I was out there a couple summers ago, and it's a wild feeling for people that haven't experienced that, to especially like the Philippines or whatever, you've got visibility galore. But out here on the West Coast, you basically, after, not long, you're lowering down in the darkness, grabbing a line, and then the objective lights up again, like you're saying, and it's like that Scooby-Doo green. Like where everything looks like, and it's pretty wild. And then you got to go back up in the dark. That's exposure.
You know what I love about that sport is it's what holds you back is not the physical part. It feels like it should
100%.
be, holding your breath for a long time. It's like, well, that's going to be the crux, right? No, it's the scariness of it and keeping going. That's the hard part.
Yeah,
I love that. I love that mental challenge.
And because this is a show essentially that deals with where we live in this corridor and this amazing place, there's like special things to consider on the West Coast. When you're climbing, you've got, a shorter season or wet weather, and free diving, it's cold water, it's dark. And another thing that you love to do a lot, I think probably more in recent years, is surfing. And, you're a West Coast surfer. I think we need to talk a little bit about that, because surfing's a huge part of your life now, and it has been for quite a few years. So what do you think about being a West Coast surfer?
Well, coming from climbing, mountaineering, mountain biking, skiing, all these very like high energy sports where everybody is so awesome and everybody's just high-fiving, and I kiteboarded for a long time, and it's just like everybody's drinking beers where everybody's launching jumps. It's just so fun. And you get into surfing and everybody's shitty. They're just grumpy, and they see you paddle out there and they don't know you, and they're like, who's this, fuck what? I'm sorry. I just like, it's totally turned me off that way, but I love surfing so much and being in the ocean that I try to look past it. And of course, what do I do to make it 10 times worse? As I pick the rollerblade version of like the surf world with stand-up paddleboarding, right?
Commands a lot of respect out there.
No, of course, rollerblades of the sea, right?
Yeah, rollerblades of the sea. And you know what? I don't give a fuck, because it's unbelievably rad. And I'm at an age now where I just don't care anymore what anybody thinks. And what's so fun is so many of my buddies, climbers, mountaineers, skiers, they're getting into it. Johnny Foon, Jimmy Martinello, Tim Emmett, so many longtime sport enthusiasts in other genres who are getting older. Their bodies aren't where they used to be. Climbing is a kind of a rough sport on your body, and surfing, it doesn't hold me back. I can go 110% every time, push it as hard as I want, crash as hard as I want, and there's no consequence. And I love that. And then you're in the ocean in the beautiful West Coast, and and you're on your own. It feels very mountain-esque, going up into the mountains and being alone and doing ascents is very similar to what my wife and I are doing now. We're taking a little Zodiac, we're going up the coast. We don't see anybody for a week. We're getting all these remote surf spots. We're seeing wolves and bears, and we're fishing and free diving, and it's just magic. I'm just completely blown away. But it's kind of like hardcore in all those ways, but it's not at the same time. It's just, you're at the beach. You're walking around in the sand. You're camping there on the beach. It's nice and sunny. You go surf a bit. Sure, it gets kind of rainy sometimes and storms come up and things like that, but overall, it's pretty chill.
What does your downtime look like? What are your, have you got guilty pleasures, or like, do you every once in a while splurge on yourself, or, dive into a show or movies or books, or like when you're not on the move, what do you do?
I love astrophysics and or just learning, so I'll be on the internet just watching a lot of science stuff. But also I'm getting a lot into editing lately, and my daughter, 13-year-old, and I are making a music video right now that I'm really excited about. And it's fun because she's acting in it, and music's a big part of her life, and so we're just doing a Billie Eilish like fan music video, which is a huge inspiration for her, and we're just having fun editing it and trying shots and playing with it. I'm way more into it than she is. I gotta admit, she's like kind of in, we'll go out, do some stuff, but overall I'm just like on the computer, just having fun with it, trying stuff. But I love being super creative and sort of being in like a little world of my own where I can just like dive into that for a while. You know? Yeah. That's what I'm doing in my time off right now.
You know, you're generally pretty, optimistic, happy guy, the smiling weasel. Is there
grinning weasel?
Is there stuff that really bothers you? Like what really bothers you these days? Is there anything?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I got these 3 girls and I take being a dad pretty seriously, and it's a pretty wild world out there. And what am I going to teach these kids? So I've always been very worried about global warming, pollution, loss of diversity of species, all these things. So, as part of that science, I'm trying to find hope and try to shepherd them towards not only surviving and doing well in this world, but helping them find hope. Because I'm really noticing with kids these days, they have a lot of anxiety and they're really worried, a lot more worried than when we were kids. I don't know if it's because I got 3 girls or what the deal is, but it just seems like a lot of parents' kids are really stressed out.
I think too, they're just barraged by information all the time.
Yes.
All the time. You're not the 6 o'clock news with Walter Cronkite. They just got like
24/7.
24/7. Pick your dilemma, right?
And also like, the 15 shittiest things that happened on Earth that day for 8 billion people is what's going to be flashing across your eyes, right?
Yeah.
Not the 7 billion incredible things where somebody pulled over and helped the person change a tire, right? Or whatever. But it's true. I don't remember being that anxious about like acid rain, right?
No.
Or the ozone layer or any of that stuff that was kind of similar when we were kids. Mm-hmm. But it was like you'd hear about it a little bit, but it's in
I got pretty tweaked. I definitely did. I remember in middle school, there was like Desert Storm was happening or whatever, and they were like bombing Iraq, and I got all worked up in French class one day and got a buddy of mine talking about it, and then we're like, that's it, we're leaving. And I think out the window a transistor or something blew up, some crow landed on some line, and it sounded like the war, and that was it for me. I got up and we stormed out. We got the whole school to march out, and we all went down to City Hall, and we're just like,
protested the war.
And I think back and I'm like, what the hell were we thinking? We're actually going to have some sort of difference here,
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely was affected back then, and now I just think about my kids. I see like they get anxiety from time to time, and it's so hard to watch as a parent. But I think overall, I bring hope to those kids, and my perspective, and if I'm going to leave anything as far as what I've learned through all of it, is that I've had enough of listening to the naysayers have a problem with anybody doing something good. They're just like, at the end of the day, somebody sees somebody working on a solution, and what you get back from the world is that's not the solution. What you're doing is going to have such a small effect. What I've learned is that it takes all the energy. It takes everybody working on their own solution to come up with a bigger impact. So if somebody is motivated and stoked on something to do good at whatever level, we should all support it, because it's going to take every one of those type of people to make it happen. Whether it's a huge problem like global warming or a small local town issue, it doesn't matter. So anytime I meet anybody who's motivated to do good, I just celebrate them.
I agree. I think there's a base level. Like you can almost put it down to a 1 or a 0. Like, are they trying to do a good thing? That's a 1. And if they're not, it's a 0. Anything else is semantics. Like at the base, like someone's trying.
Nice.
Well,
I think that deserves...
generally, a lot of times on a large problem, there's not one solution.
Totally.
So if you can have 10,000 different solutions working towards something, where one has a weakness, another will have a strength.
Yeah, and failing forward.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't turn out, but you learn something from it. I've got a couple questions and a few things I'd love to talk about if we have enough time.
Keep going.
Okay, well then the 2 things I'd love to talk about, which are kind of separate, but one is sponsorship. As Feet, you and I have been around this corridor forever, and we have all sorts of friends, men and women, that have had sponsorships. Some of them long-term, short-terms, have affected them in what I've seen negatively and positively. And as someone who's been a sponsored climber, and rightfully so, with lots of first ascents and adventuring and just athleticism. You chose to go a different route with building things and making things, and and what do you feel about sponsorship? Like, do you have mixed feelings, and what have you seen? How have you seen it affect people negatively and positively?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, being sponsored or supported by a company, you're an ambassador to that company. And, I think some of the naysaying that would happen is that, you're not the best, so why do you think you can be sponsored? Or but it was never about that. It was about representing a company or representing a community. For me, it was about being super stoked. A lot of the shows that I would do was, the message was, I'm just a regular dude and I went and did some cool shit and you can too, and it was so fun to see young people get inspired by that in the shows, meeting those people years later and be like, oh man, you got me off my ass to go out and do something, I think that's so cool. But it was never about having to be the best. It's about being good enough that people pay attention, but once they're listening, then it's about just being a good ambassador, and so I liked the sponsorship because it enabled me to accomplish things that I couldn't otherwise do on my own. And not having an education, not having resources, it's kind of limited, but I wanted to go on trips and I wanted to do neat things. So having sponsors that were willing to put money in, and then they're like, okay, well, can you just show our logo? And, and I'm like, of course, you helped me accomplish this, but it's also companies that you believe in. It's not like you're, I would meet friends who were loggers. I'm like, you're cutting down old growth, dude? Like, that's your job? Or have friends that would go out on would go drill for oil, We all got to do what we got to do. And I'm not here to say that's good or bad, but I do think we have a choice on some level. And when we don't, I don't think the rest of us should be, having an opinion about that. So I wanted to go do cool stuff and I didn't have the means to do it without sponsorship, and sponsorship made it happen. And the companies that supported me were really cool and I believed in them. And so it all worked out. So I believe in it. I think it's a positive thing. And some of the like Arc'teryx as an example is a really interesting one for me because I was sponsored by Arc'teryx for many years and they really helped me accomplish a lot of things, but they've changed. And the way they've changed is they become the big corporate machine, the selling out, all that. But I still see them as such an important piece of our community. Lately, they've been doing the Academy Festival. And I have friends who are like, well, they're not like innovating at the top level anymore. They're not doing this, that. I'm like, yeah, but they've opened up spaces for others to do that. Like my friend Nathan Kukathis with G7. Like they allow him to have his company at their festival making things that are very similar to Arc'teryx, but they support it. So they've just opened the door for others to fill that in. But Arc'teryx is now the mature corporate company who is like putting on these bigger shows because they have the resources. I just love seeing that progression and everybody supporting each other. And it doesn't feel like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like the American model. It feels very Canadian, and Arc'teryx is Canadian and they that sort of support traditionally feels like it would be a toxic corporate sort of thing. But Arc'teryx is, in my mind, has managed to get around that in a very Canadian way. And I don't know. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I do too. Like it's pretty hard to live in this corridor and not be affected by Arc'teryx. They're a huge company. They're a North Van company. And we've got tons of people in town, whether they're runners or skiers or climbers that, work with that company, and their festival has been super fun. It's been really good. And I do love that there's other vendors there, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. Like they seem to just open up to that. And yeah. It's been good.
It's a special part of Squamish, isn't it?
Well, and also it's a free, there's nights of free music, free movies. Like anyone that's, not involved in climbing or whatever can come show up.
Totally.
Have a good time, climb on a wall. And maybe find a new sport. T-Mac, what was the second thing you wanted to talk about?
I wanted to ask you about deep water soloing, because to understand, Matt, like with everything that you've done, that's a huge part of what inspires you. And it's something that from an early age in your climbing career you were involved with, that you traveled with and even written guidebooks about. And so, you know, I think people are pretty familiar with what deepwater soloing is now, but just maybe speak to a little bit about it and what you enjoy about it. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, deepwater soloing. It's definitely been a big part of my life. I think as a sport, it's probably the most adventurous part of climbing. You know, if you look at climbing up on mountains and in the backcountry, okay, maybe not so much, but if you talk about where it's confined to a smaller arena, bouldering, sport climbing, single pitch climbing, it's the most adventure you can have on a small arena. And you incorporate water, which a lot of climbers, you know, that's such a foreign thing to begin with. My favorite part of deepwater soloing is the fact that you can't hang dog or cheat. You get up off the wall and your high point's your high point. If you make it a foot higher, you earned it. You know what I mean? It's so wild. And I also love that it's the ultimate leveler of everybody. You can get somebody who's a 5'14" climber, who's, you know, 5'15" climber who's operating at the highest level. You bring them to that sport for the first time, and the 5'9", 5'10" climber could be doing better because they have a better headspace, you know? And I just love watching that person get up there for the first time and shake and freak out and look down and go, oh my God, what have I done? And there's no getting out of it. No one's going to throw you rope. There's no crane coming in to rescue you. You're either falling off or you're not, you know? And I just think that's so raw and cool. And yeah, I just dig it, man. It's such a crazy fun sport. And we got a couple in Squamish that are at that level, but there isn't a lot around. Granite doesn't lend itself to it too much.
There's going to be people that maybe aren't familiar with what it is, but basically you're climbing rock over top of water. You don't have any gear. When you fall into water.
It's steep enough that you're not going to hit the wall on the way down. Yeah.
And how high, what's the highest you've ever made it up something where you've had to, because you generally have to you make it somewhere until you either fall or jump, right?
Yeah. I've done first ascents where you're tossing for crux holds at 80 feet over the water, where, you know, you might not exactly be in control when you come off, and you got to get your shit together before you hit the water at a high speed. Yeah.
That's the thing too, that with deepwater soloing, that it's obviously really visceral when you're looking at it. You know, it's really hard to see how serious it is, but when you're on that wall and you've got swell pumping below you, and if you come off, you come off legitimately, like you don't just decide to check out and jump off. But if you have to go for a committing move and you don't get it, you're going to come off in an unusual position and maybe spin or gyrate through the air, and then all of a sudden it's quite serious. Like people have died deepwater soloing. People have punctured lungs and torn the rotator cuffs and had really serious injuries, because you don't actually have to get that high to get hurt when you're not in control. It's one thing to walk up to a cliff and throw the rock off and have a look and then, you know, go and be prepared. But when you're spinning through the air and you don't know what's up or down, it's a totally different thing.
You belly flop into the backyard pool and you understand exactly what you're talking about, right? That's from 1 foot.
Totally.
So then should all deepwater soloers, you know, have a trampoline and get that air sense that every single kid in Squamish seems to have?
I think they just got to get out there and do it.
Yeah. Well, flat water is like rock, you know, you hit it the wrong way. Yeah. That's why the big ocean's good. If it's
big ocean's good, the swell and it moves around.
It aerates that water, and it's
so much softer. It's true.
Let's probably wind her down here, but I wanted to ask Matt, you know what, you are a parent, so you're full of, you know, good advice for kids, but what do you say to that, you know, kid who's running from fight to fight, you know, messing around, getting into trouble, like kind of what advice would you give to those kids like that nowadays, if you could?
Go try as many different things as you can, because we all think differently. The school system is not designed. What is designed for, you know, 50% of us the rest of us are outliers, and you can be told that you suck and you don't fit in and all of the stuff, but really you're just not what the system thinks you are. And the key is just to keep trying things. If you have an opportunity and it even slightly ignites your mind, you might be scared of it. You might be worried about how you're going to look and peer pressure and all the things. But if you're just even remotely interested, go try it, because it could blow open a huge door and change your life forever.
Nice. T-Mac, anything to wind her down from you?
I think that was a nice note to end on. I'm good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks, guys.
I thanks for your time, both of you, and we'll take her into the outro. Okay, there we go. Not too bad. 3 voices in one convo, and I think T-Mac did pretty good for his first time. If you want to hear more episodes with T-Mac, or have any guest ideas you want to pitch, or really any feedback on the pod, you can always email me at feetbanks@mountainlifemedia.ca. And while you're on the computer, be sure to hit up mountainlifemedia.ca to check out the digital flip mags of all the new print issues, as well as a bunch of great stories, photos, contests, and of course the Mountain Life shop, which is loaded up and ready for the upcoming holidays. Beyond that, thanks to T-Mac and Matt for this nice chat. Thanks as always to Shirai Rules and Adrian Gendro for the voiceovers and the guitar licks off the top. And thanks to you all for listening. Winter's on the way, mountain lifers, but my advice is to ease in, slow and easy. Every year I hear about somebody getting a little too eager and smoking a barely covered rock, or launching a cliff and ending up with a piece of a small tree jabbed into their butt or their leg. We want a long season, so soft and easy out the gate, I say. And beyond that, have fun, be excellent to each other, and please, please leave the campsite better than you found it.